and welcome to this very important discussion with four very eminent guests. As you know that the American elections are now 2 days away, I believe. And the latest polls, of course, say that the race has tightened, even though Hillary Clinton still has a lead, but it still could go any way. So a very interesting election, also a very controversial election, which is happening. And there is much to talk about in terms of the impact that it will have, not just on the US or the world, but also specifically on Pakistan and on our region. I was just going over some stories this morning in American papers, and there is actually a concern, not just in the US but also in the world, that for the first time probably ever in the history of the US, the smooth transition of power has a big question mark over it. Because as we've all heard Mr. Trump say that he will decide after the results whether he will accept them or not. So it's a strange new development for the Americans. And as far as the world is concerned, there is justifiable concern in terms of the impact that it will have. And on Twitter, there's been some very interesting comments. So for example, from Africa, there's actually a trend which is generated and which in some people are saying that the African Union should actually help broker a national unity government in the US. And there's actually a hashtag saying November 8 Africa edition. So people are having fun with that. In Canada, there's a campaign on Twitter which is reassuring the Americans, and the hashtag is Tell America It Is Great. So they're reminding the Americans. In Europe, 85% of the respondents, there was a Pew Research poll, 85% of those people polled in Europe say that Trump will have a very dangerous impact on the world. In India, as we all know, the right wing is rooting for Trump. And in America, the Indian community has a new slogan called Ab Ki Baar Trump Sarkar. So that's also happening in the US. And of course, what about Pakistan? How are we looking at this whole phenomenon? That's where we are going to try and bring the discussion in today, as well as talk about the region and the Asia Pacific area, and what the new American presidency can, what kind of an impact it can have. So a lot of stuff to talk about. Let me quickly introduce the panelists, and then we'll dive right into the discussion. My first panelist, of course, is Mia Khurshid Mahmood Qusuri Sahab, former Foreign Minister of Pakistan, also the author of a seminal book, Neither Hawk Nor a Dove. And of course, Qusuri Sahab has been the Foreign Minister at a very critical time for Pakistan, and he's seen and taken part in very historic times. So his observations are going to be of particular interest to all of us. Dr. Hassan Askari Rizvi is our next panelist, a well-known analyst both in television and newspapers. Dr. Saab has taught in Pakistan, US and Germany, and is also author of many books on politics and military in Pakistan. Ahmed Rashid Saab, of course, needs no introduction. One of the preeminent authors, journalists from Pakistan. He's the author of 5 books on Pakistan, Afghanistan, and relation to the US, including the seminal book Taliban, which I believe introduced the movement to the world after 9/11. He has a career in journalism spanning 35 years, and is probably the most widely published journalist in Pakistan across the world. And our last distinguished guest is Mr. Rolio Goles, a very eminent guest from Philippines. He's served 18 years in the Congress. For 3 years, he's been the National Security Advisor for the government. And he also has an MBA and is a graduate of the US Naval Academy in Annapolis. So a warm welcome to you, sir, also.
Thank you.
Qusuri Sahab, let's start with you. So the topic says as the world holds its breath, the Oval Office and global security, we are holding our breath. How are we looking at dangerous times and uncertain times ahead?
Uncertain, definitely. Yes. Uncertain, definitely. As far as being dangerous, uncertainty can be dangerous. Although, in my opinion, the United States has such strong institutions that an individual can have an impact without a shadow of doubt, and the incumbent of the White House will have a major impact. But he's not the only one. There's the Congress, and the Congress is likely to be deeply divided. And then there are going to be various types of national security advisors. And I don't think that there is going to be, as far as Pakistanis are concerned, a major change on Pakistan. So what are our concerns? Our concerns are our bilateral relations, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India. These are our primary relationships, and I'll try in the 2-3 minutes to focus on these. As far as our relationship with India is concerned, as I've said in my book also, it's my belief that neither country has an option. Recently a book has come out, Not War, Not Peace, by Perkovich and Toby Dalton. And they also concluded that if any of these states concerned, or the parties concerned, has assumed that no peace is an option, then they cannot rule out a war. So I think any sensible person will have come to that conclusion. And Mr. Narendra Modi, trying to placate his hawkish roots just prior to the UP and Punjab elections, would have probably actually gone for a surgical strike, a strike that we would have felt, and not, I don't know what sort of surgical strike has taken place, but it's not a surgical strike that most Pakistanis believe has taken place. I won't go into the details. But why was he restrained in his reaction? Although, of course, you will look to the TV, to the minister's speeches, it's really huge,
almost warfare, verbal warfare being launched on Indian TV. Now, what has held them back? What has held them back is advice from India's own national security advisors that they've tried Operation Parakram. I was there towards the end of it. They've tried everything, and force is not really an option. Both countries are nuclear armed, both have the fastest growing fissile materials, both have conventional and both have ballistic and cruise missiles, both have a second strike capability, which means that there's no chance of either party surviving even if there's a sneak attack. So I think this is what the Indian security establishment told him. Therefore, as far as our policy on India is concerned, really we have to put our own house in order. The 4 foreign secretaries and the national security advisor, the recent article, I think I agree with what they've said regarding national non-state actors. But I have strong reason to believe, as somebody who's a participant after 9/11, that the military establishment has actually taken the decision to keep them in check. It's a question of doing it in stages. First, the people who took on the bad guys in the eyes of the Americans, they were tackled, the Al-Qaeda. Then next we tackled the anti-Pakistan element, those who were attacking us. And as far as those who are attacking in Kashmir, I think it's the next stage, but they'll have to be dealt with differently, not in the manner that the Al-Qaeda and the anti-Pakistan Taliban were dealt with. And I think the military establishment, in my opinion, based on my own experience, is quite clear that they are an existential threat. So that's where I'd like. So I don't think any participant of the White House, yes, on Afghanistan, if Hillary Clinton is elected, you can expect similar sort of policies, which means pressure on Pakistan to deny sanctuaries, pressure on Pakistan to prevent attacks from our territory on India, to hasten the trial of cases, etc. But that is territory that our diplomats know and our government knows. Okay. If Trump is elected, if you ask me a follow-up question, I don't want to exceed the 3 or 4 minutes you gave me, I'll come to that.
We'll come back to that. Dr. Saab, overall, what kind of impact are we looking at after this election on the world?
Well, the element of certainty or uncertainty depends who gets elected. If Trump is elected, I think there is every reason for United States itself to get worried rather than Pakistan being worried, because his ambiguous positions on national security, American national security, his emphasis that allies would pay for security, issue of disengagement, all these will cause concern and confusion within United States rather than within Pakistan. I think if Trump is elected, then there is another challenge for the United States. That is, we'll see to what extent the institutional checks and balances that are the characteristic feature of the American system can be effective in containing his own ideas, which are at times very strange ideas on defense and security, how the Pentagon and Department of State would balance, which believes in engagement, whereas he talks about disengagement at one time. Now, coming to the other side, that if Hillary Clinton is elected, then there will be a continuity of policies, and the overall objective will remain the same. The thing that we have to examine is the precise policies that will be followed, the specific policies that will be followed. And so far as the US policy in Asia is concerned, a US movement or shift towards Asia Pacific will continue, and US will build partnerships with the countries in the Asia Pacific region and also the countries that are around China. However, this effort will be to contain China, not necessarily exclude China, because the relationship will be a collection of positive and negative interaction at the same time. And the same will apply to Pakistan, that on Pakistan, US obviously loses interest over a period of time moving towards Asia Pacific, but this is not going to be an abandonment of Pakistan or Afghanistan. They will maintain their presence in Afghanistan, will apply pressure on Pakistan to deal with the issues of countering terrorism the way the US articulate. India will stay more important, because India is important as a partner in Asia Pacific. India is important to contain China. India is important as a market, and India is seen in this region as a stabilizing force. And this is what Pakistan should think about, and that is when US pursues its policy of continuing with some aid to Pakistan, military sales and economic assistance, because the US will not, new administration will not like Pakistan to completely go in the lap of China. Therefore, some economic assistance will continue.
Okay.
And the last point that I want to raise is that Pakistan will have to do two things if it wants to improve its fortune at the global level, especially with the new administration. Number one, in what manner and to what extent Pakistan can convince the international community of its concerns in Afghanistan. It hasn't succeeded in the past. And also, what are the domestic constraints on Pakistan's counter-terrorism policy? That's one issue that Pakistan needs to address. Second, important issue that Pakistan needs to address if it wants to play an effective role is how to control internal terrorism, how to improve internal economy so that it can cash on its geographic location. Geographic location has to be an asset rather than a liability, and that depends how Pakistan deals with its internal
Thank you, Doctor.
situation.
Ahmed Rashid Saab, now if we move on, sort of focus on South Asia and Afghanistan also. We know a bit about Hillary Clinton, but we don't know much about Trump. Is there a huge concern that if Trump wins, all bets are off when it comes to this region?
Well, let me just say after, your introduction, clearly, we are in a real crisis situation. We don't know clearly what Trump's foreign policy is going to be. He doesn't seem to have any advisors from the traditional foreign policy establishment. establishment. We don't know who his Secretary of State would be, although we can guess whose Hillary would be. There are 2 or 3 candidates who are possible. But the real issue that I'm worried about is the post-election scenario. As you said earlier, will Trump accept the result if Hillary wins? Even if he loses, is he going to threaten a mass movement against Hillary for rigging the elections? He's already said that she is rigging the elections. And he's already made judgments on Hillary winning. And this is really, I think, very fearful. Khurshid Saab talked about the institutions of the United States, but the fact is that these institutions have been whittled down. We've seen the loss of power of Congress. Obama has been paralyzed because Congress has not been working properly and has not been passing all the measures that Obama wanted passed. So we've seen just now with this email fiasco how a lot of the FBI and probably a lot of the CIA are in the pocket of Trump. They're not supporting Hillary, even though these are the establishment people. But clearly Trump has somehow got their support. And so the institutions in the US, I think, are really under threat for the first time. And of course, what this will do to a broader right-wing movement around the world, particularly we're seeing right-wing extremists, anti-Muslim, anti-migrant leaders emerge in Europe, in Asia as well. Prime Minister Modi is a keen supporter, so is the RSS and the extremist groups in India. So I think these are all huge problems that we will face post-election. I just want to add about India and Pakistan. I think both leaders, whoever comes in, will take much greater interest in India than in Pakistan, unfortunately. And I will say that there is now enormous pressure on Pakistan, not just from the Americans, but from Congress, from the Europeans, from the Asians, from the UN, from every quarter, to deal more effectively with the terrorism threat. We still have 2 or 3 major groups of terrorists who are still living in Pakistan with the permission of the state. And I think this is now becoming unacceptable. If we look at the recent blow-up with India over in Kashmir, we're saying that, we have not been able to convince anyone around the world that our position is justified. And that is not because of the poor state of our dialogue or the cause of Kashmir. It's because of other things. It's because of our position on the Taliban, the Afghan Taliban. It's on our position on Lashkar-e-Jhangvi and Lashkar-e-Taiba and all these other groups that we have not yet touched.
Mr. Guliz, you of course, you've seen the working of the government from very senior positions, and there is a major debate, in fact, going on in your country regarding ties with the US. How is this election going to impact the Asia-Pacific region, or especially in context of the Chinese influence now becoming much more aggressive?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the organizing body for making me a part of this program. I am awed by the personalities with me, considering your diverse and very deep background of the topic. Well, just like you, we're very much interested in what's happening in the United States. The Philippines is tied to the US trade-wise, economically. We used to be a colony of the United States for 50 years. There are about 4 million Filipino Americans residing in the United States. Many of them are voters there. Many of them with their own belief on who should be the next president of the United States. And of course, we are keenly interested on what the China policy will be, especially in the light of changes in our own government also with respect to the relationship between the Philippines and the United States. I think you've read that our president has made some statements that are not the same statements made by previous presidents. In other words, he would like to navigate an independent foreign policy, not really tied to how the U.S., for example, votes. But I'd like to give my own opinion. In my opinion, whoever wins, the next president is going to be more assertive than the incumbent president. You know, President Obama, I think what happened to him was he was immediately given a Nobel Prize award, even before he warmed his seat. And I think he took that very seriously. He became a peacenik. He made some decisions that probably were not in consonance with the decisions of some of his Pentagon advisors with respect to some conflicts, especially in the South China Sea area. And either Hillary or Trump would be more assertive than President Obama. I'd like to read some notes I have with respect to the expected policy on China. In the case of Hillary, if she becomes president, according to his advice to her advisors, they will continue not to take side on the South China Sea, just like the policy of the present government. But they would not want the South China Sea to be militarized, although it is already fast getting militarized with the reclaimed areas. 7 of them can be easily militarized. They already have defense systems there, radar, and I understand that in a very short while, they can deploy as many as 24 fighter jets in each of the artificial islands, particularly the 3 major islands. One is inside our exclusive economic zone, Mischief Reef with a 3,000-meter runway, Fiery Cross Reef, Subi Reef. And they will insist on freedom of navigation. In the case of Trump, his advisors announced in an interview that he believes that what China has been doing is in violation of international law, as evidenced by the ruling of the International Arbitral Tribunal in The Hague last July, where the tribunal struck down their claim on the South China Sea as indicated by their 9-dash line. By the way, if people are not familiar with the 9-dash line, the South China Sea, they're claiming practically 90% of the South China Sea, not just as an EEZ, but as territorial sea. In other words, they have sovereignty over 90% of the South China Sea, and that includes 90% of our West Philippine Sea. But according to his advisors, Trump sees that as a violation by China, and what Trump plans is to restore the naval power. The U.S. Navy is already very powerful, but I guess the direction is to really make it stronger. And I think this is evidenced by the fact that many generals and admirals are there with Trump as his advisors. He will also assert freedom of navigation, and he will do this. And I'd like to quote their words, without ambiguity. In other words, they'll be very forceful and very assertive here. Now, the Philippines is located in the middle of all this conflict. We are in a very critical, crucial geographical position as far as the South China Sea is concerned. The Philippines is the one that divides the South China Sea with the Western Pacific. So we play a very crucial role. We have a mutual defense treaty with the United States, but a lot of this has become a little gray because of the recent pronouncements of our president. So all of this, the new president coming up and our new president with his different leaning will play a very critical role on what will happen next in our part of the world.
Now, I'd like to focus a little bit more on Pakistan and pick up from where Ahmed Rashid Saab said that that Trump or both of them will ultimately be much more favorable towards India. But Suri Saab, so then if we take that argument a little further, does it really matter to us here who wins? Will there be any substantive difference in how they approach Pakistan? Either one.
No, of course it does matter because we are all international citizens. Let's see, climate. What President-elect or what the candidate Trump represents is quite unbelievable. He doesn't believe in all these theories about climate change. In fact, it will be a disaster. He's against Paris Agreement. Hillary Clinton will uphold Paris Agreement. I mean, this is a threat to humanity. And so that's number one. As far as in Pakistan is concerned, I know you want me to focus on that. My own opinion is whoever gets elected, they will have to deal with Pakistan. Just as there will be a transactional relationship with India. It is going to be a strategic relationship. There's no doubt about it. It's because Pakistan has also made choices on the basis of its own experience. Pakistan has decided on China. Right? It makes eminent sense, but it doesn't mean that we give up on our relationship with the United States. Pakistan had to work very hard to improve a relationship with the United States, and instead of taking your time, I just repeat what Professor Hassan Rizvi had said, that there are some things we need to do on non-state actors. We need to convince the international community on Afghanistan that it affects our own security.
What I'm specifically trying to figure out is that these are issues which will remain alive between Pakistan and the US. But would it make a difference if Trump is there in the White House or Hillary on these two issues, on these major issues? Sorry.
I think both leaders, whoever is elected, will have a much more aggressive and muscular policy towards Pakistan. First of all, they will be heavily under Indian influence, and India is already on a big Pakistan bashing campaign by Modi talking about Baluchistan and raising all this in international forums, calling Pakistan the mother of all terrorism, etc. So all this, I think, is going to be adopted to some extent by the American leadership.
Will the PM house in Pakistan, Dr. Saab, or GHQ, will they be rooting for one or the other? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Do we like one better than the other?
I think US will definitely, I'll come to the question, US will prefer India, but US will not see Pakistan through Indian eye. They will apply pressure on Pakistan, but US will not declare Pakistan as a terrorist state as desired by India, because US will like to maintain a relationship, because with all shortcomings that there are in Pakistan's foreign policy, Pakistan is still important if the Afghanistan problem is to be resolved. Pakistan may not resolve Afghanistan problem, but Pakistan can make it very difficult for any country to settle Afghanistan by excluding Pakistan.
But who would be more aggressive towards us?
I think Trump would be more aggressive towards us, because his views are not very clear, and he's talking about the allies contributing to the expenditure on defense and security. He has made a statement to the Indian community that the US and India are the natural allies. I think there will be greater leaning and also a kind of policy of disengagement. When it comes to disengagement, I think Pakistan will have more problem as long as Pakistan doesn't address the two issues that I have raised in my main presentation.
So Kusuri, sorry, yes, Mr. Gulab.
Yeah, I just would like to inject something. You know, the key word here is pivot to Asia. That is the existing US policy. And in my opinion, that is not going to change. I've dealt with the US government, especially the Department of State, when I was the National Security Advisor in 2001 up to 2004. Even up to the time of the launching of the Iraq War, I was talking with them. The Department of State is controlled by career officials. They are very influential in making foreign policy, irrespective of who is the Secretary of State, more than those who occupy the staff in the White House. They're very influential there. That is why you will see that the National Security Advisor, even though physically close to the President, also his ambition is to become eventually the Secretary of State, the Department of State. Now, we're talking here of superpower play, US versus China. We're talking of the US trying to diminish the position of China and vice versa. And in this particular case, in the Philippines, for example, in the South China Sea, Pakistan is not present. India is starting to make its presence felt because they have an oil development project with Vietnam. They participated just a few months ago in the Malabar naval exercise together with Japan and the US. However, Pakistan enters the picture because, we in the Philippines The US also will look at India as a counter force with respect to the dominance of China, China being assertive. Pakistan enters the picture only in the so-called string of pearls strategy of China. You know, from China to Hong Kong, to Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, Malacca Strait, to the Indian Ocean, all the way to the Horn of Africa. China is trying to develop a network with Myanmar, with Bangladesh, with Sri Lanka, with Pakistan, and you can see this in terms of the kind of hard power and soft power that they're using. You know, hard power, the fleet, for example, the submarine patrols already in the Indian Ocean. Soft power, $34 billion, I think, to Bangladesh. I don't know, to Pakistan, maybe 40 billion. To Malaysia, 34 billion. To the Philippines, 24 billion. A lot of money flowing out of China. That is soft power. Not to mention the very rapid deployment of their fleet. They're constructing a second aircraft carrier. As I mentioned already, they are very dominant because of the artificial islands that are now virtual military bases in the South China Sea. These are the things that will be addressed. And we are not talking anymore of the Pacific area. We're talking of the Indo-Pacific area as far as the balance of power is concerned. And there, Pakistan will play a very crucial role.
And whoever wins the White House, the next 4 years will coincide with greater Chinese influence coming into Pakistan. So are we looking at a seesaw where Pakistan is slowly moving deliberately towards China and trying to minimize its dependence on Americans and whoever the next president is? Is that going to be happening in the next 4 years?
Well, the realignment of forces is taking place. There's no doubt about it. But just as, and I agree with him when he talked of, and that's what I meant by institutions, and I agree with him that it is career diplomats at the State Department. They have long memories, unlike people who come and go. So as far as Pakistan is concerned, they would not like to give up on Pakistan. It's too dangerous. And the book published in 2013 or 14 by Daniel Markey, No Exit, it is very clear why it cannot give up on Pakistan is the India, the importance that they place on India, Pakistan's nuclear program, Pakistan's relationship with China. All these are things which are very important on American foreign policy horizon. So there's no way, I mean, and if they do that, it will push us more in the lap of China. It is in Pakistan's interest that we maintain good relationships with both. And I think because all we have to do is to put our own house in order. I keep on sounding the alarm. Our policy towards Afghanistan, our policy towards non-state actors. Once we've done that, there is no question of any presidential candidate having a major impact. Yes, they have to be more assertive, particularly on Afghanistan. $1.5 trillion been spent. They have to placate the Congress and the media. But the people in the State Department know some home truths. And that is why I feel that, yes, our relationship with China will improve, but I don't see that it's going to be a total divergence of views. There's no such thing as a zero-sum game in international relations. China and America can even cooperate, as on Afghanistan. Even on the China-Pakistan economic corridor, it is in the United States' interest that Afghanistan gets connected to it. So I don't think really that the heavens will fall down. But we absolutely, I agree, and all of us are agreed, that there are some home truths which we must recognize and which we must address.
But Ahmed Rashid Saab, this policy that Kusuri Saab is referring to, specifically on non-state actors, that is changing, or at least the Pakistani state is struggling to sort of reverse those decades-old policy. So there is a certain level of optimism that we've learned from our mistakes, and at least the course correction is on way. Would that be a correct assessment?
Look, absolutely. I mean, I think this is the first time since the 1980s, since the Ziaul Haq period, that we have actually aggressively tried to clamp down on those extremist terrorist groups who've been attacking the Pakistani state, attacking the army, attacking civilians, blowing up buildings, etc. But there's still two groups who I maintain are still living peacefully in Pakistan without coming under undue pressure. The first group are the Afghan Taliban. We all know that the leadership is living in Quetta. They take it's even called the Quetta Shura. I mean, you know. So, and unfortunately, we have not really got a policy towards the Taliban as to how to get them to move back into Afghanistan and to open talks. Last year, we did seem to have a policy, but it broke down very quickly. The second group is the what I call the Punjabi groups who are lined up against India. And they're all on our border, they're in Lahore, they're on our border, and they also still have the protection of the state. Now, something clearly has to be done, because it is these groups who are holding us hostage on policy towards India. Because we are constantly having to react. These groups go, they attack, they launch an assault on the Indian side of the border in Kashmir, and then we are on the defensive, trying to prove that, you know, that we had nothing to do with it, they don't belong here, etc. This puts us into a very difficult situation.
Dr. Saab, but at least we are out of that denial stage.
I think two things have to be kept in mind. Firstly, you will see between Pakistan and the US positive and negative interaction going on simultaneously. We'll work together in certain areas and disagree in the other areas. Now, so far as these special terrorist groups are concerned, Pakistan needs to explain why it doesn't take action against them. The problem is that India and the US sees terrorism problem only limited to three groups. Whereas for Pakistan, these three groups are part of the overall terrorism problem that Pakistan government has to address. And that's the issue that needs to be raised at the international level. Unfortunately, that's not taking place.
Let me talk about something that will be of interest to you. You know, Pakistan is being mentioned right now in the Philippines in relation to our relationship with the United States. The question that some people are asking is, the Philippines is an ally, a formal ally of the United States. We have a mutual defense treaty since 1951. But they keep on asking the question, why is it that the US is extending more financial assistance to Pakistan than to the Philippines? And they said, how come that's, we are being treated in an unequal basis? And of course, I mentioned that the reason for that, I was there in the Department of State when Pakistan, together with the Philippines, were declared non-NATO, major non-NATO allies. Because of I told them, Pakistan is very important to the US because of the war against the Taliban. And that's the reason why Pakistan is getting more financial assistance from the US than we in the Philippines, even though we are allies of the United States.
Okay. We have a little less than 2 minutes to go, so maybe one quick question on Afghanistan, then we may move to Q&A. Kasturi Sahab, the Americans have a particular interest in Afghanistan for obvious reasons, and that's a point of engagement with us. Depending on whoever wins, will there be a fundamental pressure point on Pakistan regarding Afghanistan? And what could be that possible pressure point?
It actually is going to be the same, the Haqqani group. Actually, there's no surprises there.
Right.
And I think we are moving in that direction. And as I've repeatedly said, that we have to address some concerns. And there are serious concerns. And I just don't think, knowing the Pakistani army as I do, for 5 years I dealt with Pakistan Army and the ISI, I know their mindset. They are not an isolationist army. And the reason is very simple. For the 1948 onwards, they've had to deal with an enemy or an opponent 5 or 6 times their size. So they always need an equalizer. First it was the United States, then it was China. But they will not give up on this policy, and they will not give up on relationship with the United States. And it is my belief that it will happen incrementally. And first it will be those people, and ultimately it will be those who attack India or in Kashmir.
Which means, Ahmed Rashid Sahab, that we are not the villain of the peace when it comes to Afghanistan anymore. I mean, this new policy of fighting terrorists and even being proactive on Haqqani network to an extent, are we being able to sell this position?
Well, at the moment we are not, frankly. And as Hassan said, I mean, unfortunately we view Afghanistan too much through the prism of India. We are obsessed with an Indian presence in Kabul, with Indian influence in Afghanistan, and I really think it's not really relevant, because we are the neighbor of Afghanistan. India is not the neighbor. We share a mixed population of Pashtuns with Afghanistan. All the Afghan trade goes through Karachi. India can never replace Pakistan as an ally, friend, strategic neighbor of Afghanistan. And yet we seem to be, the reason we give internationally for supporting or continuing to allow the Afghan Taliban to live here is because, India is the threat and we have to counter India. Now, I mean, if we help make peace in Afghanistan, the Afghans would be even more grateful to us, in my opinion, than, us allowing these Afghan Taliban to make war. I'm very worried in the next few months when you have the interregnum in America between one president and the next, if a major city in Afghanistan does not fall to the Taliban. Now, if that happens, it's going to lead to a huge spillover effect. And again, accusations against Pakistan for supporting the Taliban, etc. And a very risky beginning for Pakistan's relations with the US.
Okay, so we are out of time for our discussion, but we have time for questions. Here's the first one. As the pressure on Daesh is increasing in the Middle East and it has started its retreat as well, will Daesh increase its influence in Afghanistan in the near future?
Yes.
You want to take that?
Yes, I'll take it. Well, they've already done it. It's not a will they do it. In fact, their footprint in Afghanistan has increased, unfortunately. And in fact, some of the recent attacks in Quetta are also as a result of that connection. So it's not that it's going to happen, it's happening. They're replacing Al-Qaeda, and there's been fights within the Afghan Taliban and the Islamic State. Had there not been a serious threat, those fights would not have taken place.
Kusuri Sahab, there's a specific question for you, so I'll just follow it up and then come back to others. It says, Hillary Clinton is a war criminal in Libya and Syria, and Trump aspires to be one. Can you comment on that?
Well, you see, point is this, that when you come to war criminals, it's very, very subjective. Yes, in the eyes of many, those who got killed. But in international relations, you normally see that war criminals who are being tried, or even in the International Criminal Court, they are largely Africans, and the Africans have started resenting it. So this is a subjective question, but I do agree that some of the policies that Hillary Clinton followed have resulted in huge human losses. The losses that you're seeing particularly in Libya, and also in Iraq and Syria, she had a role to play. And probably Trump is going to make it worse. So I agree with the questioner.
Dr. Saab, the question is, why do we have such a reactive approach?
I think we are, trapped into two things. What Mr. Ahmed Rashid said, India's obsession on us, that limits our options, and we seek partnerships far away to balance that. Secondly, unfortunately, we have not been able to put our own political and economic house in order. And in the post-Cold War era, in the present international system, the real strength of a country comes from within itself rather than through alignments with others. And it is here that we have been weak, and we have not been able to develop that kind of self-cultivated confidence. We don't have that. That's why
Ahmed Rashid
we have the
Saab, question
problem.
for you, and then for Mr. Gulez after that. For Mr. Ahmed Rashid, why would these supposed terrorist groups that you have mentioned, why would they have state support?
Well, I don't think they have state support, but I think they have sanctuary in Pakistan. They're not being harassed in the way that other terrorist groups have been eliminated, as we've seen in Waziristan, in Fatah, in Karachi, and in other places. And the reason simply, again, that some of these groups are part of an anti-India position, and they take an anti-India position. And I mean, what I think globally, what we are facing is that we cannot conduct a foreign policy through non-state actors. That is what is really being questioned right now as far as Pakistan's foreign policy is concerned. We also conduct foreign policy through the Foreign Office and through the UN and other organizations, etc. But the fact is that non-state actors are also relevant here, and they have a kind of sanctuary.
Would it be fair to say, Amir Rashid Sahab, as a follow-up question, that making a decision to decommission the non-state actors is one thing in which we may have taken that decision, but the process of decommissioning itself takes a while. It's a difficult process. So would it be fair to say that perhaps we are being too hard on our government? Give them time. They've said that we are going to disassociate ourselves, and it will take time and effort.
I agree with you. I mean, it will take time. And secondly, the policies that to decommission the groups in Punjab or in FATA cannot be the same as you've used previously. They have to be more conciliatory. They have to create incentives for people to become literate and educated in other subjects and there has to be jobs and a whole list of things have to be done in order to disassemble these groups. But I think at the same time, I think the process is too slow, number one. Number two is there's a difference between the civil and the military outlook. As we know recently, the differences between the elected government and the military are very acute differences. And these are not differences just today. I mean, every civilian government has faced problems with the military making certain demands upon it, and the civilian government either not implementing them or whatever.
Yes, I'd like to come in on the basis of my own experience. International community continues to say, oh yes, you addressed those who attack XYZ country, but not those who attack India. Or in the case of Haqqani Network of Afghanistan. As far as India is concerned, I have cited Indian sources in my book in which they admitted that when the peace process was going on with India, they reduced dramatically. In other words, there is a direct connection between a proactive and a positive engagement with India, because that will allow us to carry public opinion with us. You cannot do it with a push-button operation. You need the support of your own people. And that is where the Foreign Office needs to explain. And I agree with the spirit of your question. Actually, the decision, I think, has been taken. And if there is a proactive engagement with India and it looks a productive engagement, we almost reached a solution on Kashmir. So we were able to satisfy our own people, and we were thus able to decommission people. I've mentioned in my book through DDR techniques, de-radicalization, rehabilitation, demobilization, we were able to bring them back into civilian life. And the government of Pakistan will do it. We've done it once before. Why can't we do it again?
So it's an encouraging sign. This is a very interesting question for Mr. Gules, but I think I'd like the other panelists to jump in also. Question from Mr. Ibn Azhar. It says, the two candidates, Trump and Clinton, seem to be very controversial in many ways. Does this pose a question to the efficacy and failure of the democratic process itself, whereas China, with no democracy, is doing fine?
Well, that may not be a very accurate statement because one has to relate economic success with whether it is the government centrally managing it. In the case of the US system, and we have a similar system, although we don't have the very difficult primary system, what you always see there is the dynamics between the Republican Party and the Democrat Party. However, of late, the Democrat Party has become so dominant, especially with the rise of President Obama, that may be the reason. You know, Hillary was being projected as a sure winner, and maybe that's the reason why Trump became popular as a counterforce against those who are not in favor of Hillary becoming president. You know, the Clintons are very popular. But at the same time, in my opinion, there's a big force that is also working against them. They have that built-in resistance within the American system that is against the rise of another Clinton to become president. So that is the situation right now. So we cannot blame that on the system. We have to blame it on the political situation right now that gave rise to the emergence of these two personalities. Because if you look at Clinton, for example, we see the usual emergence of a successor to the dynasty, just like a Bush replacing a Bush, then a Clinton replacing another Clinton, and that is true in Pakistan, that is true in the Philippines, that is true in Korea, that is true in Japan, that is true in Singapore. You know, dynasties exist, irrespective of the kind of political system that the countries have.
I think there is a more fundamental reason underlying this. And it's not just limited to the United States. Look at what's happened in India, the rise of the right in India. Look at what's happened in Europe. So many countries, France and Austria and Germany, I mean, you can continue to name, in Netherlands, the right is rising. And that has basically got to do with the unhappiness with globalization, with the current economic situation prevailing in various countries. And actually, it is that polarization which has denuded the democratic system of the cloak of tolerance. So I don't think, and then even in the United States, this is regarded as the worst campaign in history. It's not typical of how the American democratic system works. So that, I think, coupled with the big changes and the refugee problem, I don't want to go into detail, you understand that. All of that has resulted in great polarization in European countries and in South Asia and in many other parts of the world. And your President Duterte of your country using language which is unthinkable against American president.
Well, we have time for one more question, but Dr. Saab, I just wanted to refer back to the earlier question about China. We've got $46 billion of Chinese investment coming in. So financial influence normally is followed by political influence. We are talking about the US democratic model and the undercutting of its credibility to an extent through this election. Is Pakistan going to be talking about the China model in the coming years for us also in some way?
Well, Pakistan may not talk about the Chinese political model, but Chinese are now building greater influence in Pakistan. Until now, the relationship is more at the official level. But now, with a lot of teaching of Chinese language, because that had been a major obstacle to communication at the societal level, now you have a large number of Pakistani young people going to the Chinese universities for higher education and a lot more exchange program. There is a realization in China that societal linkages have to be established. That will increase China's influence, but still the Western influence is likely to be dominant in Pakistan despite our policy leanings toward China, because the societal linkages between West and Pakistan are stronger than with any other part of the world.
Ahmed Rashid Saab, considering...
Excuse me, may I just respond to, because our president was mentioned. One has to understand the situation of our president. I'm not in his party, I'm neutral in this particular case. You have to look at his background. He was a local mayor in an area where toughness was a very important ingredient for leadership. That's why he became very successful there. And that was the kind of toughness that appealed to the general electorate. He was able to win 16 million votes because of the personality that he projected, and he addressed a very major problem that we have. This is drugs. He said that he's going to address that in a violent way, and while campaigning, he was using these coarse words. Now, with respect to his statements against America, one has to understand also that he comes from an island which suffered a lot during the Philippine-American War and during the pacification campaign of the Americans, especially about 100 years ago. So this is the kind of resentment that has not survived the years. So he carries that. And that is becoming a dominant part of his foreign policy, although some people are trying to moderate him, saying that, look, we cannot just depart from a long trade and security relationship with the United States. That cannot be done overnight. So we have to understand the position of President.
Ahmed Rashid
here.
Saab, we have 14, 15 seconds. If you just wanted to add something.
No, I just wanted to add on the Trump question. I really think, this man is dangerous because he is trying to destroy democratic institutions in the US. I mean, his attack on the media, for example. He's terrorizing the media because they're not. His attack on his own party, the Republican Party. I mean, he would like to be an autocratic leader without having to represent his party. He's talked about draining the swamp in Washington and cleaning out Washington. So I think there are huge dangers that this man is, and look at the amount of official people, government bureaucrats and officials who've actually denounced him. Yes, there have been some who are supporting him, but I think a lot of them have retired officials have actually denounced him.
Okay. Well, that's all the time that we have. So before I thank all my panelists, there was one question which I'm going to read out, but we don't have time for an answer. But because Kasuri Saab, you have a fan in the audience. Amar. So he says, kind attention, Mr. Khurshid Kasuri, being my best foreign minister in all times, what shall be your say on the new nexus of Beijing, Moscow and Islamabad, irrespective of whoever wins? I just wanted to read out the question, but we don't have time for an answer.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to thank the fan who exists. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you to Khurshid Kasuri Saab, Dr. Hassan Asaki Rizvi,
You're a
Mr.
lucky man.
Ahmed Rashid, and Mr. Rolio Goles for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.